Hello everyone, today I want to share this beautiful story. A story that will touch your heart and remind you what true love really feels like. It is full of emotions, memories and moments that stay forever. So stay with me till the end. And don't forget to subscribe my channel. So let's begin. I never believed in love the way people describe it in books or movies. To me it was something far away, like a dream you wake up from. But everything changed the moment I saw her for the first time. That day was cold, rainy and honestly pretty boring until she walked into my life. I was walking back home from my part-time job when I saw her standing by a bookstore window. She had a red umbrella in her hand and was lost in the pages of a book. She looked like a scene from an old love song, and something inside me told me to talk to her. I hesitated for a few seconds and then walked over and said, "Hey, nice weather, right?" She looked at me and smiled like I had just said the funniest thing. We laughed and talked for a while and I felt something I had never felt before. She said her name was Emily and she lived just a few blocks away. We didn't exchange numbers that day, but I knew I had to meet her again. I started visiting that bookstore every evening hoping I would see her. Days passed and finally one evening she walked in again with that same red umbrella. I felt like the world had paused just for us to meet again. This time I didn't waste a second. We talked for hours about life, music, books, dreams, and everything in between. She told me she loved art and painted whenever she felt sad. I told her I played guitar, though not very well, but enough to make her smile. That was the beginning of everything. We started meeting more often and every time felt like magic. Sometimes we sat by the lake and talked about the stars. Other times we just walked silently holding hands like nothing else mattered. But love is never just about the good days. There were times when things were hard. We had misunderstandings, we argued over silly things and sometimes even serious ones. But no matter how bad the fight was, we always came back to each other. I remember one time I forgot her birthday. She didn't talk to me for a whole day, and I felt like I had broken something special. I bought her flowers, wrote her a long letter, and stood outside her house in the rain. She opened the door with tears in her eyes and said, "You really are an idiot, but you are my idiot." Every memory with her is like a part of my soul. From late-night calls to surprise road trips, every moment with Emily felt like home. She supported me when I lost my job. She believed in me when even I didn't. One winter evening I decided to propose. I didn't have a fancy ring or a perfect plan. I just took her to the lake where we used to sit and talk. And with shaking hands I said, "I want to grow old with you. Will you be my forever?" She looked at me and said, "Jake, you always were my forever." And in that moment everything made sense. All the pain, all the struggles, all the laughter, all the tears, they were all pieces of this one beautiful picture. We moved in together in a small cozy apartment with too many books and too little space. We made burnt pancakes on Sundays and danced in the kitchen with messy hair. Sometimes we stayed up all night watching movies. Other times we just sat quietly and watched the rain, like that first day. Love is not about perfection. It is about choosing someone every single day, even when it's hard. It is about growing together, forgiving, learning, and never giving up. And that's exactly what we did. Years have passed now, but I still remember every detail of how it all began. The bookstore, the umbrella, the smile, the rain. And every time I hold her hand I feel like that young boy all over again, falling in love for the very first time. So if you are still waiting for your love, just believe that it will come when you least expect it. And when it does, hold on to it with all your heart. Because true love is not easy, but it is always worth it. There was a time when Emily got accepted into an art program in another city. It was a big opportunity for her, something she had always dreamed of, but the thought of being away from each other scared both of us. We had never done long distance and we knew it would be hard. I still remember the night before she left. We sat on the rooftop wrapped in one blanket. We didn't talk much, just held hands and let the silence speak. She looked at me and said, "Promise me no matter the distance we will not let go." I said I promise and kissed her forehead. We called every night, shared our day and sometimes even just stayed on the call without words. Some nights were tough, especially when I missed her laugh, her touch, her silly jokes. But we held on and trusted the love we had built together. After 6 months she came back and ran straight into my arms. That hug felt like I was breathing again. She cried and said, "I never want to be away from you again." I smiled and said, "Then let's never be apart again." We started building a future, one small step at a time. I got a better job and she opened her own little art studio. It wasn't big, but it was full of her magic. And I was always there helping her clean, paint and even talk to customers. Life was not perfect, we still had rough days. Bills got tight, family expectations showed up and sometimes we were too tired to even talk. But we always remembered our promises to choose each other no matter what. One evening I got really sick and had to be hospitalized for a week. I was scared, but she never left my side. She slept on the hospital chair, held my hand during every test and whispered stories into my ear every night. She said if love could heal you, you would already be running around again. When I recovered, I realized even more how deeply she loved me. It was not just the happy moments. It was her strength during the dark times, her presence when I was weak. Years passed and we created memories in every season. We celebrated birthdays with burnt cakes and laughter. We made traditions like midnight walks on Christmas Eve and reading letters to each other every anniversary. One time we rescued a little dog that became part of our crazy life. We named him Peanut, and he followed Emily everywhere. Even he could feel the warmth she carried. Our small apartment turned into a home full of love and barking. Sometimes we sat and looked back at where it all began. The rainy umbrella, the missed chances, and the found paths. Emily would say, "I am glad you came and talked to me that day." And I would reply, "I would choose you again 1,000 times." Now whenever I see young couples in cafes or parks, I silently hope they find what we found. Because love like this doesn't shout, it whispers. It stays, grows, and becomes a part of who you are. Emily still paints every weekend. I still play my guitar in the evenings. And every time we sit together with tea and music, I thank the universe for that one rainy day when I found my forever marriage. Was something we both dreamed about, but never really planned in any perfect way. One afternoon we were sitting on the porch with coffee and Emily looked at me and said, "Jake, let's just do it, let's get married." And I smiled and said, "Are you serious?" And she nodded with that look in her eyes I could never say no to. We didn't need a big wedding, just a few close friends, some fairy lights and a promise to stay together forever. We moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment close to the studio where she painted and I worked evenings at a music cafe. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours, and every corner held a little memory. From burnt toast in the mornings to quiet rainy nights, we were building a life together. A real life, not perfect, not easy, but full of meaning and moments that mattered. The first few months were full of joy and small discoveries, like how she hummed while folding laundry, or how I snored softly and denied it every morning. We laughed more than we argued, and even the arguments ended in us hugging each other and saying sorry in whispers. But slowly real life started creeping in with its bills, responsibilities, and moments that tested us. Emily's art studio was not doing great, and she began doubting herself. She would sit for hours staring at a blank canvas, and I could see the storm inside her. I tried to help with words, with presence, with love, but sometimes the silence between us felt louder than any noise. She once said, "I feel like I'm failing," and I held her hand and said, "Failure is part of flying. You just need to flap a bit harder." Around that time I started working longer shifts to support us. Some days we barely saw each other, and when we did we were both too tired to talk. We missed dinner dates, we forgot anniversaries, and sometimes even forgot to ask, "How was your day?" But deep down we knew this was a phase, and phases pass if we hold on tight. One night she broke down and said, "Jake, I don't know who I am anymore." And I told her, "You are the girl I met in the rain, the one who makes colors come alive and my world feel warm." I took a weekend off, and we drove to the lake where it all began. We sat in silence and then slowly started talking like we did back then about life, dreams, fears, and hope. That trip changed something. We promised to check on each other, not just physically but emotionally, to pause, to listen, to care before reacting. Emily started painting again, not to sell but to feel alive, and I started writing music again, not to earn but to breathe again. A year later something beautiful happened. Emily told me she was pregnant. I stood there frozen, then laughed, then cried, then hugged her like the world had just given me a gift I never knew I needed. We painted the baby room together, picked names even though we didn't know if it was a boy or girl. Every heartbeat in that tiny ultrasound felt like a drum of hope echoing in our hearts. The months flew by with a mix of excitement and nervousness. Emily had cravings at 2 a.m. and I would run to find pickles or chocolate or both. She would place my hand on her belly and say, "Feel that, that's your kid saying hi." And I would smile and whisper, "Hey little one, we can't wait to meet you." When the day finally came, I held her hand through every contraction. She screamed, she cried, she squeezed my hand until I thought it might break. And then I heard the first cry. And just like that, our world changed. We named him Noah, and he looked at us with eyes so full of wonder that it made us fall in love all over again. Parenthood was messy, sleepless, and overwhelming, but also magical. The first time he smiled, the first time he said "Dada," the first time he walked into Emily's arms. We captured everything, not just in photos but in the corners of our hearts. We were no longer just two people in love, we were a family. Years passed and Noah grew into a curious little boy, always asking questions, always wanting to learn. Emily's art changed, it became more raw, more real, more reflective. My music softened, became more personal, and sometimes Noah would sit next to me and strum his tiny guitar. The house echoed with laughter, chaos, bedtime stories, and random dancing in the kitchen. Of course there were still hard days, days when work was too much, or Noah got sick, or we felt disconnected. But we had learned the rhythm of love. It was not about perfection, it was about presence, about showing up again and again. One evening we were watching Noah sleep, and Emily whispered, "I still can't believe this is our life." And I said, "I still can't believe you chose me that day under the umbrella." She laughed and rested her head on my shoulder, and for a moment everything was still, just as our journey, our love stretching into forever. Now when I look back at how it all started, a rainy day, a smile, a small conversation, And then look at where we are today. It feels like a miracle made of ordinary moments. And that is what love truly is, not grand gestures, not perfect pictures, but small quiet choices every single day. To stay, to believe, to grow together no matter how hard it gets. So if you are someone who is holding on to love or still searching for it, just know real love takes time, effort, patience, and a whole lot of forgiveness. But when it comes, it will not just fill your heart, it will change your life. Like it did mine, like Emily did for me, like Noah did for us. So this was our journey. A story of love through rain, and sunshine through silence, and song through moments that made us who we are. If this story touched your heart even a little, then remember that love like this is real and possible and waiting to find you too. Thank you for staying with me till the end. Your time means a lot to me, and I hope this story made you feel something beautiful. If you enjoyed it, please like the video and share it with someone you care about. And don't forget to subscribe my channel for more heart-touching stories like this. Stay kind, stay in love, and keep believing in beautiful beginnings. See you in the next story.